Hi, I bought myself some rust, £160 worth of rust, and underneath there I'm pretty sure there is a Ford 1600 GT engine somewhere. So in this video we're going to rip this apart and see if we can build a race engine out of it, using bits from that engine that we looked at last time. There we go, that one that we blew up in Anglesey. Not only that, actually one of the main things I want to do is that firstly I want to compare what's on the race engine to what's on a normal road car engine that's been totally unmodified. Excuse me. And I might also build this into a series of videos about how you turn a road car engine into a race car engine. The idea of formulas like Formula Ford and Formula V is that you can pretty much take a standard road car engine, stick it in your race car, and then you should be as competitive as everyone else. But unfortunately, you know, things don't work like that. This engine here, the road car engine, should be about 80 odd horsepower, whereas that race engine will be at least 100 horsepower. And the difference really is that getting every last bit out of, you can't change the camshaft or anything like that, you can't change the valve, really change the valve lift or anything. The main differences is just maximising absolutely everything and getting it all perfect so that you can get the absolute most out of what is just a standard engine with the standard camshaft and everything. So I might do a series of videos looking at like how the engine builders go about that. I probably won't do everything because I'm not really an engine builder. I don't really know enough about engines, obviously. Actually, hopefully I'll learn as I go along doing this. So I'm going to take this engine apart today and see what the differences are between this engine and the blown up race engine, and hopefully we'll build this up into a suitable race engine, so at least I've got it as a spare for the race car next year. Almost forgot to mention there, yeah, got myself a cup of tea, obviously. First thing you need when you're doing a bit of engineering is a cup of tea. Right, let's get on with it. Well, first things first, on this road car engine, which you don't have on the race engine, there's a dipstick. In fact, not just the dipstick, there's an entire sump. On the race car there was a dry sump. Here where we have the oil filter, there was a dry sump pump. This is an engine mount, and that would have been used on, I think that's not used on this side on the Mondial, but on the other side is the remote oil filter housing. So that's what we make use of, that's how they make use of the bolts on that side. Got a very crusty old distributor that'll be going straight in the bin. Fuel pump as well probably won't be any use. There is another engine mount in there that can be taken away. We don't need that. This carburetor, I don't really know how they jet them, or if there's differences between the race engines, the way they're jetted, but that will be no good anyway, just judging by the condition of it. We might actually be able to make good use of this this throttle mechanism. It's something that's not very good in my 89, the throttle mechanism, and that might actually come in useful, so certainly I'll keep bits of that. What can go though is that rusty old clutch. I mean, that's just a mess. I don't even know how I'm going to get that off. I don't suppose those bolts are going to turn very well. If you look around the other side, if you're wondering, by the way, I've just fixed the white balance. That's why everything's no longer all blue. I usually use this camera in my office, and when you come out here into the garage it goes a totally different colour. Anyway, so I'm around the other side of the engine now. The important thing to note on this engine is that we've got a 711M 6015BA block. That is the Formula Ford block. That's the one you need. There's another number on here which says T13, and that's the casting number. I think that progresses, that went over time, so it's a T13 will be quite an old block. I think you can go up to like the newer ones like T18 or maybe even higher. I don't really know. Anyway, the rust there doesn't stop over this side of the engine. Obviously this cover's no good to us. We don't you don't put the oil in the top of the engine on a race car. You put it in a separate oil holder, oil reservoir, which you would have seen in the last video. Just for a comparison, actually, I've got the other head here in front of me, but if we take a look at these little tiny ports, this is going to be one of the main differences between a powerful race engine and a road car engine. Most of the power is going to come from the cylinder head. You need the bottom of the engine to be reliable, but the cylinder head's going to deliver up the power. We compare that to the race engine. You can see the ports are significantly bigger. Let's see, you can't even really see in with your eyes, never mind the camera, but that is quite smooth. down the exhaust ports. They are full of soot. But you know, the other engine was even worse than that. The first engine we had in that Mondial was even worse in terms of soot. Other things on this side of the engine, we've got these engine mounts here. I think they're for an alternator actually on the road car, but they'll go anyway. We use them for mounting the front mounting on the race car. That can go. That's another. Whoops! I ran out of space on the SD card there. If it was really professional, I'd just start from the beginning and do it again, but I'm not. So anyway, yeah, we were saying like this is used for the remote oil filter housing. This lower engine bracket on the Mondial. So I think it's time really to start pulling it apart. I'm gonna start by taking the carburetor off. The inlet manifold, the carburetor, that inlet manifold should be good actually for the race engine, because you're not allowed to modify them, so that should be. And the other one actually, we did look, didn't we? We saw that it would be, someone had messed around with it a little bit, so that was probably no good to us. So I'll take that off, check that that's okay. Take the carb off. The carb I'll keep as a spare for something, but I don't think it's going to be ever used or any good for anything. We take the head off, and that'll leave us with the bottom end. Get rid of that nasty clutch and flywheel. That'll be too heavy, that anyway, to be of any use. And then we'll take a look inside the engine and see how worn it is and see if it's got the right camshaft in. It was supposedly did have a 1600 GT camshaft, so we'll be able to identify that from the part number written on it. So let's do it. This engine's been home to about 1 million spiders. Almost feel guilty. Just as a little aside whilst we're doing this, this is the race car carburetor. It would have gone there like that, just like this one. You can't see because the air filter's on the top of it, but all this choke mechanism, it's just gone on the race car. You don't bother with that. And there's like a big control system here on the side which takes hot water to measure the temperature of the engine, and it's like an automatic choke, so it decides whether the choke, it's going to choke carb. All that's taken off on the race car, that's just gone. You can see where would it be? It would have all been connected around there, that stuff, and it's just gone. It's taken away, as is this lot, because you just don't need the choke on a race car. You just pump it full of fuel to start it and then warm it up so you don't damage the engine. So there's something that's different. One thing I did notice, actually didn't realise Weber carburetors were made in Italy. It says Weber, Bologna, Italy. I thought it was a German company. Might still be a German company, but this one was actually made in Italy. Anyway. Despite me saying I'd keep this, actually, you know, it's that rusty, it's probably not worth it. I might keep this bar, and it's really this bit on the carburetor that I was interested in keeping. That is just, it's finished. You don't put crappy stuff like that in a race car. This was surprisingly tricky, getting that undone. One of the nuts was just really stiff, but it's come off now. Ooh. Wow, that's unpleasant in there. I mean, basically, look at that. I don't even know whether let's see if it opens the throttle. God, you can't even. Am I turning that the right way, or is that really just? Yeah, that is just corroded so badly you can't even open the butterflies. Let's see if we can do it with a spanner. The guy said this has sat in his garage for 30 years. This engine, I mean, obviously not unused, just neglected. So yeah, see solid that carb can just go straight in the bin. There's absolutely nothing worth keeping on that. Also, I was optimistic about the inlet manifold, but if we have a look down there, that is not a pretty sight. It's not so easy to see on camera. Oop. Just sat in the WD-40 and it sprayed up my bum. That doesn't look good. That doesn't look good. I don't think, I'm not sure whether that's even worth cleaning up. No, I think even the inlet manifold's probably going to go straight in the bin too, because that's pretty unpleasant. Right, so like I mentioned earlier, there's no need for a dipstick, but this goes off down to it, down the bottom of the block there. There you go, just pulled it out. Alright, you can't really see. Let me just move the engine out. That's better. So this dipstick here, that was which is registering 0. There's no oil in that engine. So that's slightly worrying as to what the state of the engine is going to be, but that went down this hole here. If we take a look at the race car engine, we can see that's the same hole, but we can see it goes all the way through. In fact, if I poke the dipstick in there, oh, it's been blocked up obviously, but yeah, it would have popped out this hole in the bottom. So that's how he was doing the measurements on the sump. So obviously that hole needs blocking off somehow. I don't really know how they do it, to be honest, but it shouldn't be too tricky to do that. So we just continue this comparison. There's the race cylinder head, the race engine cylinder head. You can see the size of those nice big inlet manifolds. We're about to take a look at what the road car inlet manifold ports look like. So let's just whack that off. It's all unscrewed, this, by the way. It should just come off. That's it. Oh dear. Oh dear, oh dear. That is not a pretty sight. There is 30 years of shit down on each and every one of them. I've already decided there's better ones to start with than this one, so that's probably going to go in the bin. But if you look at the inlet ports anyway, that is corrosion. I mean, obviously, if you was going to use this on a race car, you'd have them correctly ported out anyway. Just trying to rip off some of the old manifold. So really, it doesn't really matter if there's a bit of surface corrosion, but oh, that's pure mush. That's amazing. It's just years of stuff. I mean, it absolutely has no odour, but it's just like all kinds of mush just gone down there. So I tell you what, I'd imagine the inside of this engine aren't going to look very healthy, considering that that's probably a closed valve. Yeah, that valve was closed, so that's been closed for 30 years, but some of these valves will be open, like that one. That's an exhaust valve. There'll be an open inlet, which is going to be, well, they look like they're going to be open. So all that stuff that's ended up down there will have ended up down the cylinder with the open inlet valve. So I'm not that optimistic that this engine is going to be very good inside, but we're going to put liners in it anyway, so it doesn't really matter all that much. Well, let's carry on, take the head off and see what it looks like inside. I'm having real trouble getting these plugs out because of the amount of like dirt there is around the holes, so you can't get the socket onto the end of the spark plug because there's that, like, the space around it, the annulus around it is so full of crap. But look at the state of that spark plug. Like, it's just, I don't even know what that is. It's obviously like something that's rusted, that's gone down there and rusted away, but it's just like horrendous. It's like filled with something. I've just never seen anything like it. But the guy said the engine sat here for 30 years and it's just in an absolutely terrible state. It's unbelievable. I'm really looking forward to seeing what the cylinders look like on something that's just not moved for so long. But like, it was unbelievable. That's another one. I mean, they're probably just filled up. Any of the ones with open valves are probably just filled up with all kinds of silt and dirt over the years. Like, hopefully the block will still be suitable for liners, which is the reason I bought it. And also hopefully there's enough oil in the bottom of it. See, this is what I mean, you can't get the socket on because of the amount of dirt around it. But yeah, hopefully the crankshaft as well will have been covered in sufficient oil, that'll be in a reasonable state. See, that one is actually okay, and that one is one of the ones that had a closed inlet valve. So, well, say it's okay. not really okay. You certainly couldn't use it, but it's a lot better than the other two, and I think the other two have had open inlet valves, and that's just let all that crap in over the years. The guy had it by the front of his, like the garage door, so all kinds would have blown in under it. And they've got the same problem with it not fitting on because there's too much dirt around it. Luckily they're not too tight. Right, so the rockers are undone now. I'll just take these out. The rocker push rods, it's going to be quite important to keep them because the ones on the other engine down there, they got all bent when the engine blew up. Some of them are okay, but not all of them. So this rocker assembly probably not worth keeping, just because, well, because firstly there's a lot of wear on the let's get hand shot. Yeah. Starting to get a bit dark around here, so I've had to put that light on, which is obviously ruining me white balance again, but it's not that bad, is it? Let's face it, you can still see. Anyway, here's the rocker shaft. There's quite a bit of wear on them, and also these rocker shafts actually get modified so that there's more, effectively this length here is effectively extended relative to that length, so you effectively get more lift. So when you turn, oh, that one's C solid. Here we go. Let's try and find one that isn't C solid. So when the push rod pushes on there, there's more leverage, so that effectively moves further for the amount that moves. I don't exactly know how they modify them, but that's what they do. You could just modify the position or the part of the rocker that pushes on the valve. If you use that top edge, obviously that moves further than the inner edge. I'll take a glove off, hey, my hands are dirty anyway. See, the inner edge is obviously going to move less than the outer edge, so if you got it so that that part pushed on the valve, it opened the valves further. Or they could, I suppose they could do something. You could also change the angle. That's another way of doing it, I suppose. You could change the angle that the rockers are at rest, so that if you take a look there, if the push rod's in that position, it's going to move the rocker a lot more when it's closer to the shaft than it would do if it was further away from the shaft. See, if the push rod was there, it'd move it less than if for the same vertical movement as if it was there. So maybe that's how they do it. I'm not 100% sure, but that is one thing that gets modified on a Formula Ford compared to a road car. And actually, just to expand on that, by changing the angle, what you could do is, if you machined a little bit more off the end there, maybe that's how they do it. If you machine more off the end there, it's bound to be further round to start with, and the further round is the closer the push rod's going to be to the shaft, which means more displacement. So presumably then you actually just machine a little bit off the tip. You can't actually go too far with that though, because that is the actual valve lift is controlled by the regulations, and they do measure it. So, and it's quite easy to measure, so there's no getting around it. I might take a look at the other one just to see. There's the push rods out of the tappets. Some of them are really rusty, so obviously, yeah, they'll be the ones. Would they be the ones that had the valves open? I'm not 100% sure how that's got down there, but some of them are rusty anyway and won't be of any use. But luckily, it was only about three of them that were bent on my engine, and to be honest, they're like 10 a penny, these things, so I'm not too worried about them. I did have a look at the rockers as well. You can see that they do modify them somehow, but it wouldn't really show up on camera, so just have to take my word for it on that. I'm not particularly optimistic about this. Some of these valves don't even open if you push them, whereas most of them will. I think a lot of these are like rusted shut. Not optimistic at all. That was unbelievable. These bolts were so rusty, it just so difficult to get them out. Actually, loosening them off to start with wasn't too bad with the big breaker bar, but then unscrewing them, nightmare. Anyway, it's time to crack the head off. So all the bolts are undone. These studs aren't going to be worth much, so I'm going to bash against them. Oops. Try not to get the camera. Just whack it. There we go. It's actually surprisingly loose considering how hard the bolts. Oh, there we go. Oh my god. Oh dear. Oh dear. The spark plugs and the state of the inlet sort of reflected what I expected to see, but oh dear. Well, we'll take a look at the block in a second, but that's a bit of a nasty looking head there. Very crusty. That is just, that valve is rusted into position. Anyway, they're not very light these, so I'm going to put it down. But look at this. Just what the... That is collected. That is disgusting. 30 years of just sitting in someone's garage getting like shit under the door. I mean, it actually looks like feces. In fact, I'm thinking of playing a little trick with this. We'll come back to that. Anyway, here's the gaskets. To be fair, the gasket's in decent condition, but why wouldn't it be? And the face of the head is too. That though. Just unbelievable. Just unbelievable. I just can't believe it. No, that's not shit. Although it certainly looks like it. It's obviously like got bits of iron in it, so it must be rust and just dirt that's collected in there, but ugh, disgusting. Definitely needs liners. So that's where we're going to leave it for the block today. I'll take the head inside now and take the valves out, or attempt to take these valves out. I think I'm going to have to whack the top of them with a mallet just to free them before I even get the valve spring compressor anywhere near them. So we'll leave the rest of the block for another day and just take a look at this cylinder head. Okay, well unfortunately I'm actually just going to leave it there for today. There's quite a lot of effort involved, or work involved in taking those valves out to that head, just because of the state of them. And I wouldn't mind comparing them to the race head at the same time, so I'm going to leave it there and pick that up in another video. But that's a pretty crusty engine. Hopefully there is enough oil in the bottom of the engine to keep the crank in good condition over all that time, and perhaps that cylinder head, I mean we're going to put liners in it anyway, so any of that surface rust isn't really going to be an issue, and I don't think it's eaten too badly into the rest of the block anywhere else, so I think we'll get away with that cylinder block. And hopefully, well, you know, I can't see that camshaft being in good condition, but I do have another camshaft anyway that didn't get snapped in the original engine, so fingers crossed all that'll be good. We'll carry this on another time.